Hello everyone, it's Amy and welcome back for week 5 of the new Build Your Stash and Craft. So for this week, we bought these paints at Walmart and we picked up some white paint at the Dollar Tree, some paintbrushes from the Dollar Tree, and a couple too thick foam, well it's just regular fun foam, from Walmart. So for this week, we spent $6.25. And so that put $1.25 in our bank, which means that we now have $10.75 saved up from what we have not spent out of our original $7.50 each week. So what we're going to make this week is we are going to make our own foam stamps. So we don't have any stamp pads for this series, and you know, stamp pads are not that cheap. Paint is much cheaper and paint works well, but there's another thing that I'm going to show you too, how to use your stamps without a stamp pad. So I'm going to set the paints aside for a few minutes because we're going to need to make some stamps first. I've already taken out a little piece here and made a few little stamps because you want to let them dry before you use them, and so I figured I would get some made that would be dry. We'll still try using them. Hopefully they'll get dry by the time we need to use them. So, and also if you have a pen, this one's got a little piece of tape on the top because that way I know this pen really doesn't work. But if you have a pen that does not work, grab that too. And whenever, if you have a pen that runs out, keep that pen each time you get one, because you know they get misplaced and stuff, and then just mark them somehow to show that that is an empty pen. But they work really well as a ball tool, as a creaser, and they work really well to make prints on your foam pads. So what we're going to start, I'm going to start out by, I think what I'm going to do, and we're also going to need our markers this week and our and some chipboard, which is any kind of a box. The heavier the better. And if you have a piece of, you can just use a piece of paper or a piece of saran wrap or whatever. But if you have a lid that you're not using, those work great too. They make a great palette. So, but what I'm going to start with, I'm going to finish cutting this off. And we'll make a couple more small stamps. And then I'm going to take this one and I'm going to glue it on here. Now, normally I cut my stamps out and glue them to the cardboard, but there are some types of stamps that I want the cardboard, like the, how am I going to say that? I'm not going to cut the foam into a shape. So therefore, gluing it on the cardboard right away just already has it glued to the cardboard, and then you can work on it and you'll be all set. So what I like to do to make sure that I've got total contact of my stamp is you want to spread out your glue so that it covers every bit of where you're going to be gluing your foam. And since I'm going to be using a strip of foam that's that big, I am going to make sure that I get glue all the way out to the edge. Over the whole thing, even get it back here where I was touching it. All right, so I'm just gonna take this, I'm gonna line it up on my foam pad, keeping it out of my glue. If you have a piece of scrap paper or something, that's always good to have in your crafting space close by, or you can just grab that scrap paper and put it down when you're doing something like this so that you're not getting glue or paint or whatever it is that you're kind of smearing around. You're not getting it on your work surface where you're going to want to put other things that you're working on. All right, so I am just pressing that down on there. There we go. And then I'm going to just cut it out. And I'm going to just cut it just a touch big. Well, no, I don't need to cut it a touch big. Just go right there. Right along the edge of that. Okay, so there we go. Again, give it a good press. And then, what do I have here that's heavy? There's a book. I'm going to set it over here, and I'm going to put a book on top of it to keep it from, see how it's curling because of the glue. So that will, there we go. The book will help keep it flat, and it will also help keep them in contact with each other while the glue is drying. Okay, so to make your own phone stamps, it's just very simple. You can make any shape that you want to. You can draw them first. If, let's say you want to make a heart, but you want to know what it's going to look like before you draw it on your foam. Maybe you only have a little bit of foam left. So just take a piece of paper and cut out your heart. I always cut hearts by folding them in half if I'm trying to make one that's symmetrical, the same on both sides. So I can just go ahead and cut it out of my paper. See if I like the way that it looks, and I do, and then draw it onto my foam. And the thing is that piece is too small, so I'm just going to come over here and I'm going to find a piece of scrap paper. Try and kind of pick up a little bit of that glue. I could put it on there and let it dry, but the problem is I don't want to let it dry because I'm enjoying my little background here for a while. And I do apologize if it's too busy. Sometimes people say that my backgrounds are too busy, but I kind of enjoy them that way. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my heart right on my fun foam. And being that I cut it out of, I'm just looking for a pen. I cut it out of white paper. It's not easy for you to see, but there we go. I'm just setting it right on there. Now, the thing is that, you know, you kind of want to not put it in the middle of that piece. You kind of want to go to the edge, you know, get kind of close so that you're not wasting your fun foam. But as you're doing this, whoops, keep your scraps, because those scraps make great background stamps. And we'll do one of those too. Okay, I didn't do a great job tracing it, but there it is. So now I'm just going to cut it out. And the other thing that works really well for these, I'm going to cut right across here because I don't want to deal with that whole big piece. If you have any little fun foam stickers, if you've got kids and they've got some fun foam stickers, those also make great stamps. So these are ways that, you know, I mean, we spent 47 cents for this one piece of foam. That one piece of foam will go a long ways. It will make you a lot of stamps. And so, you know, you don't have to go to the store and spend, if you went and got this as a rubber stamp at the store individually, you would probably pay at least $3 or $4 for it if you went to like Michael's or something to buy this. Because I don't think I've seen any that are cheaper than that. So it might even be more. I don't know. I haven't gone in a long time. But there we go. Now we have a foam heart. Now we want something to mount it on so that we can stamp it and pick it up. And so that's where our chipboard's going to come in. Now, whenever you've got your boxes like this, like that's a pretty nice piece of cardboard there. But we've got this little lump right here. So when you cut that out, and you've got that lump on there, you don't want to stick your heart on there with that lump, either having your heart on that lump or even just having that next to your heart, because when you stamp on this, because that's raised up a little bit that little lump there, that will pick up your paint or your ink or whatever and get it on your paper. So whenever you're doing these, make sure that you cut those off. Even if that makes this piece of cardboard too small, then it's just too small. It's better than having this get on your project every single time. Although that could be used to make a line as a stamp. Pretty cool. And this does have a bit of bend in it. It's a little too small for our heart. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to cut a piece of this back here. Now, you can also make them, if you want them to be a little sturdier, you can take your box and you can glue 2 pieces of your cardboard together, or 3 pieces. And that will make it even heavier, more like wood instead of just a piece of cardboard. So, you know, you can do that. Now, if you're going to glue cardboard like this together, scratch this up. If you have a piece of sandpaper, a nail file, or even just take your scissors and go ahead and, you know, if you have a sandpaper or a nail file, you know, it kind of does it better. You don't have to get rid of all the picture. You want to get rid of some of the shininess, and you want to get to the point where there is, you know, basically some cardboard there, because your glue does not like to stick the best to this shiny part on the box. So I went one way and then I went the other, and see, now there's kind of like a hashtag on there, and it's not all shiny. Wherever it's scratched, it's not shiny anymore. So if we take that and we glue that, we don't want to glue it to another shiny part. It's better to glue it to the actual cardboard side, because then you've got one side that's all cardboard, which likes your glue, and you've got one side that is scratched, which is taking your glue okay, but not as good as if it was plain paper or plain cardboard. Now, if your cardboard doesn't have the shiny on it, then you don't have to worry about doing that. But this is what you do if you want your backing to be thicker. And like I said, you can do 2 thicknesses or 3 thicknesses, whatever you think that you need. So there we go. And now we'll just cut that out. And so now it's just a little thicker. And we're going to glue our heart to the cardboard side, because then we know we're going to have the best adhesion we can get versus putting it on the shiny side. And normally I just kind of spread it out to make sure that I know it's going to cover the area that my stamp is going to go. Now, don't get glue on this part of your stamp. So if you got it on your hands, kind of wipe it off first. And just, you don't want wet glue. If you got dry glue on your hands, it's not going to hurt anything because it's not going to get on your stamp. Okay, so there we go. I'm going to put it down nice and flat and give it a little bit of a press. Again, making sure that, there we go. So now we have a heart stamp, and it's going to work really well. I'm going to get some of this glue off my hands. So you can trace circles, you can cut squares, diamonds, triangles, you can do wonky circles, you can do flowers, you can do any kind of shape that you can think of. And then, you know, and you can even do, if you say, well, like I saw somebody that had a postage stamp, okay? Well, then let's do a postage stamp. Let's cut a square. You know what? That was part of the reason that I did this one. So we'll leave that one for just a second. Let's just go ahead and cut a square for a square. And just put it on our cardboard. I think I'm going to just cut around it first. Or at least kind of around it. There we go. So the more you have sticking out around the edges of your stamp, the more chance you have of getting paint or ink on your background that you don't want to touch your paper. So you can always trim them up as close as you can get them. so that that won't happen. I'm going to put this on here. I'm going to line it right up to this edge. I think I must have turned it because it doesn't line up only just on one edge. Okay, so got it lined up right there. I'm going to let that glue dry a bit, and then I'm going to trim off this little bit of excess of the cardboard so that I don't get ink on that and get that on my project that I'm working on. Now with the hearts, you can do the same thing, and circles and everything else. Normally what I do with one that has this much of a shape, I don't get right next to it. Although this one is really big enough, I could just go right in next to it. Oh, I forgot that I did the double cardboard. I was thinking, boy, that's cutting really hard. But yeah, you can just go right in next to it. But you want to make sure you keep the cardboard underneath. Don't cut the cardboard out from underneath of it. You know, don't go at too much of an angle. Okay, so come over here. And flat sides and points seem to, for some reason, grab your paint or your ink the most. So if you can't get in to do something exactly, like don't leave a point on it or a straight edge, just kind of round the edge. I'm going to go down like that. Okay, I'm going to come up here. Trying to keep my scissors fairly straight so that my cardboard is underneath the whole thing. And we'll see if we can come in like that. There we go. I just don't want to cut into my heart. Go on the back, cut it out that way. There we go. All right, now I kind of put my nail into it right here, but not very hard. So it now has just a little tiny mark right there where my nail was. That mark may or may not show up when we use this stamp. We'll find out. It's not very deep, so it may not show up at all, and it probably won't show up at all with paint. Could show up with ink. But so you do have to be careful. You want to keep your tops flat. Now, if they get really dented, I have never tried a hair dryer, but if you heat them with a heat gun, which we don't have yet, that will take that out. We'll eventually get a heat gun. So if you have some that have marks in them that you don't like, set them aside, and when we eventually get the heat gun, you can kind of hit them with a heat gun, and what it does is it kind of like, it restores the foam back to its original flatness, pretty much. So now we've got a heart, and we've got that on a double layer of cardboard. We've got this piece that we're going to set aside because we're going to use that at the end. I am going to trim down this square. So we have a heart and we have a square. And again, like I said, you know, the sky's the limit. You can trace around anything, and you don't have to make small stamps. It depends on what size stamp you want. And then I'm going to show you a few others that I did. I just had them right here too. Okay, so we've got an extra piece right there. Found them. Okay, so I've already glued these down. So I have a word stamp that says love. I have some little tiny squares that are just abstract. They're not all exact. I could have measured them and cut them all exact. I kind of prefer the difference look like that. And I have a little bit of a asymmetrical heart because one side's a little higher than the other. So what I was saying about this one's pretty tiny. I don't really want to cut around, you know, exactly next to it. But so what I do then usually is like I kind of take off all of those hard edges and get fairly close to my stamp, just so that I don't have as much of a chance of the cardboard getting on my project instead of just my stamp. So I'm just going to do that. This one, I think I'll just go next to it. If you have squares and stuff and you cut off right next to them, the nice thing about that is when you stamp it down, you know exactly where the foam is. If you leave a lot around it, you don't know exactly where that's going, you know, exactly where it is. You know, well, it's a little higher to the top than the bottom, or a little closer to the left than the right. But if the cardboard is exactly where the fun foam is, then you know. Underneath this piece of cardboard, that's where the stamp is. And remember, I told you to keep, if you have a pen that has run out. Now, you don't have to have a pen that has run out. So we've now got those 3 and those 2 that we just made. You can, and I'm going to use a pen that has not run out so that you can see what I'm doing here. But let's do another word stamp. Let's, I was trying to think, I wanted to make it a little higher up. Well, this isn't going to make it much higher, but a little bit, I guess. All right, so now what I usually do is I usually write it down so that I can see it to make it go backwards. And remember, they have to go backwards, not just the letter, but the direction. So the H has to start over here, because once you get it written, H-O-P-E, you're going to flip that over, and now the H is on that side, because that's where we just put it. So remember, backwards and backwards. The word and the letter needs to be backwards. So, and a lot of times right now I'm actually pressing into the fun foam to make a dent, because that dent, like I said, remember I said with the fingernail, the dent is going to stay there. So wherever the dent is, your color is not going to show up. So if I were to make this, if I were to put this in pink ink, the pink is going to show up all the way around it. And if it was on a white piece of paper, the letters would be white. Okay, but normally what I try and do, which I had forgot to do is I try and put my letters on there first so that I can make sure that I kind of have them where I want them before I start pressing in. And of course, you know, you can take a little bit more time doing this. I think if you have a computer, I think there are programs that will write words backwards for you. And you can just color on the back of them with a pencil, then set them on here, right on top of it, and that pencil mark will go onto your fun foam. And then you can trace it onto your fun foam. But what you want to do is you want to go over it really well and press down. You don't want to rip your fun foam. That's why you kind of do it over and over. If you just press super hard right from the start, you know, you have a very good chance of ripping your fun foam. So just kind of just go back and forth and back and forth. And as you do that, you'll feel it pressing down. And then that makes it so far away from the top of the fun foam. And that's why you want this thicker fun foam for your stamps. It's not thicker, it's normal from Walmart, but the thin stuff from the Dollar Tree is a little bit too thin to do this with. But if you have the thin stuff from the Dollar Tree and your Walmart doesn't have any, or you can't get out to get it or whatever, you could take that really, really thin fun foam and glue a couple pieces together. And then put them under a book. Let them sit at least overnight so that they're really dry. And then you can go ahead and just use them as just like you would this fun foam, which is a little bit thicker. So there we go. Now we have the word hope. And now what will happen is sometimes, because I put this ink on here, and especially because it's so heavy, if I push hard, especially if I push hard when I'm trying to stamp it, what's going to happen is that blue ink is going to come out. It will come out off onto my paper. which actually, sometimes it actually really does look pretty cool, because then instead of your letters being white or whatever color your paper is, your letters actually kind of come out blue. And after a while, that stops happening because you've used up the ink that you had pushed into there. But just so that you know, that's why it's nicer if you have one that doesn't have ink in it, because then you know that ink's not going to get on your project if you don't want it to. But the other thing is, you shouldn't be pressing that hard anyways. So you want to be more of an even smoothing rather than pressing really hard. So there we go. Now we have hope, which is just like our love, except this one is square. But see, this one I did exactly the same way, but with a pen that had no ink in it. Had a little bit of ink, a little bit came out there on the bottom of the L. All right, so we're just going to glue that onto a piece of cardboard and let it dry. And you know, one of the biggest things when you're crafting is letting things dry. You know, sometimes it just feels like it's an eternity, but you know, go on to something else. You know, do something else while you're waiting for it to dry. Kind of have in your head, I'm going to dye paper today, and it's going to take a while for it to dry, so while it's drying, I'm going to go do this or do that. Even if it's housework. Ew. But, you know, just kind of make sure that you've got it in your head that you're going to let it sit and dry so that it works better. Because sometimes you take a while to get them, and then you try and use them right away, and you've ruined what you took that time trying to make. So now the one that I had done earlier here, I wanted to show you, I was going to show you how you could do just a square. But one of the things that I did want to show you that you could do is a corner. Oh yes, and a postage stamp. Let's make the postage stamp kind of tall and skinny. Okay, a corner. Really, if you want to do a corner, it's kind of better if you make it square. So this is 1.5 by just over 1.5. So just trim a little bit off this end. Okay, so that's pretty good. Now what I'm going to do to make a corner stamp is I am going to draw a line. And again, I'm going to do it with a regular pen, but normally I would do it with my empty pen. And usually if you go through your junk drawer, although one time I needed an empty pen and I went through my whole junk drawer, it wound up being like 2 coffee cups full of pens and not one of them was out of ink. I couldn't believe it. That never happens. So I'm going to go corner to corner, just like that. So now I'm going to have 2 corners to use. There we go. Alrighty, and so now in order to make, I'm going to use both books now, the book that I had sitting on our cardboard and the other one. Get it just a little bit closer. So now I'm just going to decorate this, and you can decorate it any way you want to. If you make sure that what you put across the bottom is centered. Okay, so on the angle, this is 2 inches long. So my center is here. Now, if I want to, I'm going to want to put something on each side of that. So let's go out 1/2 inch here and 1/2 inch here. All right, now, if I put something here, and on the next one, we won't center it, and I'll show you the difference. Put something there and put something there, and then we'll put that there, and we'll put that there. So I want to just make sure that anything that goes off this bottom edge is in exactly the same place from corner to corner, so that we can actually turn that corner stamp around and stamp it right next to itself, and it will make a square instead of a corner, and those things will line up, or they will closely line up if they don't perfectly line up. So there we go. Anything that goes off the sides or the point or anything, it really doesn't make a difference. Well, actually that could too, but that's another, that could be a whole different story. Because you could make sure that everything is exactly the same, this side, and then from corner to corner, so that you actually could make a box. But then I'm just going to kind of come in here and put a few circles, and I'm doing this really fast. And the thing is, you think you know how this is going to look, and when you stamp it, it's going to look totally different, because you're looking at the part that's not going to show up. These spots that we are pressing down are not going to show up when we stamp. The part that's white is the part that's going to show up. So it's really hard sometimes to figure out what it's going to look like, and then when you stamp it, it's kind of like, oh, that's really cool. I like the surprises like that. It's fun to do craftsware. And you know, you may think, oh, this is really a beautiful pattern. And then when you stamp it, that's not the pattern, because that part is not showing up. And sometimes you can feel like that's disappointing. So just, you know, kind of like, don't have it in your head exactly how you want it to be. Just wait for the big reveal. Okay, so now we've got that corner stamp, and here's the other corner stamp. So with this one, I'm going to like put a circle here and kind of here, different, making sure it's a different size. I just want to show you what happens if on this line, if it's not equally distributed, like this was right in the center, then these were both exactly the same distance from the center. These ones are just going to be wherever they are. And we'll see what they look like when we try and stamp them next to each other. And again, like I said, I'm doing this really, really quickly. So you know, the more detail that you put in there, sometimes the better it is. Sometimes just a little bit of detail is good. And really, I'm not 100% sure if I've ever had one that I really did not like. I've had lots of them that did not look how I thought they were going to look. But most of the time, I think I really did. I, you know, wound up liking the finished product, even if it didn't look the way I thought it was going to. And of course, now I've learned that not to expect what it's going to look like. But again, I'm just making sure that I press those marks down. So that they don't show up when we stamp. Okay, so now we have two different types of corners, and we'll do a postage stamp. This is the most like kind of intricate one. You have to think about what you want your postage stamp to look like. So this is our stamp. And I want it to have a person on it. So we're going to say, let's give this person a nose. And maybe some hair. And come down like this. Okay, this is our person. That's what we want to stamp on our paper. That means we cannot push that person down. Anything you want to show up, you have to leave it raised. So I'm going to cut the top off just a little bit, just so that we have less to do. Okay, and I think that I want a little bit of a ruffled edge around the top. I am not pushing it all. I am just drawing very, very lightly. Because this that I am drawing right now, I want it to show up. So I cannot push it backwards. All right, so what this stamp is going to look like when we're done, it's going to show up scallops around the edges with a person in the middle. And I'm going to say, like, I'm going to put a circle here that's going to stick up because maybe that's where the price is or something. And maybe like leave a line here that is going to show up like maybe where there was some writing or something. So these are the things that I want to see. Okay, now what we have to do is press back everything that we don't want to see, what we don't want to be part of our stamp. So we're going to go in and we are going to color every bit that we don't want to see. We're going to push hard. Well, you know, we're going to press firmly over and over. I'm going to take this circle now and I'm going to go around it because that circle's going to show up, but where I just went around it is not. So if I go ahead and press these parts back so that I wind up having these little partial scallops. How long are we getting here? We're getting close to time here. But just remembering, everything that you push back doesn't show. And this is really a good one to use an empty pen on because you really don't want this blueness showing up. But, and again, like I said, but the thing is, take your time because this right here, you're making a stamp to craft with, right? But making the stamp itself is crafting. So remember that, you know, the creating the bits to go with what you're doing is just as much creating as making a card or making a journal or making a you know, piece of art to hang on the wall. Or making journaling cards or whatever. This that you're doing here, this is crafting also. And I really love this kind of crafting. Okay, now I've got that push back. I'm going to kind of just go round and around. And again, like, because I really want to push all that extra stuff back. So we're going to see these bumps. We're going to see that circle. We're going to see that person. And we're going to see this rectangle. And this is taking a little bit of time. I am kind of hurrying. Again, another one of those things where it's like the more time you take, the better it will be for you. But I like to try and give you different, because you don't have to just use this for a postage stamp. You know, you can use this for anything where you think, I want a flower. Draw the flower and then press everything back all the way around that flower. And that flower will be the part that's sticking up. So you can use it for many different types of applications. And I probably will be back at other points in time during the series to make more different types of stamps, because I love making stamps. I make them quite often. I have a whole binder full. And I tend to use my own stamps, I think, more than I use my store-bought stamps. Partly because when I use my own stamps, if I'm making a card or whatever I'm making, if I use my own stamps, that's really my piece of art. It's nobody else's. You know, not the person who designed that stamp that I bought at the store. You know, it's mine. And so that's part of the reason I like doing it. Okay. This might not be as good as it could be. Now let's see here. I want the head and the body kind of separated a little bit, so I am going to put a little line, I'm not going to push quite as hard because I don't want that line to get really wide. Hopefully that's enough. Okay, so now we have all of these different stamps. And I'm going to show you how to put a handle on them, even though we don't have the product to do that, because we are actually going to buy this for next week. So I have it here to show you what we need for next week. So I'm going to show you how to put a handle on them in case you have some at home. Okay. All right. So these are some of the stamps that we have. Oh, that was one of the pieces I cut off of here. Look at, that's a rectangle stamp. So masking tape. You can use regular tape. You can use any kind of tape. I find that masking tape works really well to make a handle for your stamps. And we are going to buy masking tape for next week so you can make up all your stamps, play with them, find out how hard it is to keep your fingers out of the ink. And then when we get the masking tape for next week, you can put the masking tape on there. So you're going to fold it. You're going to hold it out like a little wing on each side, fold it in the middle, and give that a squish. And it doesn't have to be perfect. And then just turn your stamp over and put it on your stamp. Press down those wings and then turn it over, taking your, because now this is your handle. See, there's your little handle. You're going to fold your handle down so that it's the same size as all the rest, and then you're just going to cut off the excess tape. And that is the easiest way to be able to use your stamps. It makes it so much easier than not having a handle on it. I love handles. I definitely want a handle on these corners so I can show you what I was talking about in making a square with them. I'm going to fold that handle down and cut off the excess. Okay, I'll do it with this one too, just so that I don't smear it and then have you not see what I'm talking about. Okay, and then we're going to stamp quickly because I'm kind of running out of time. Maybe we'll play with these again next week. So these are the stamps that we have right here, and I'm going to grab some paper. And now we've got all of our stamps, and I'm going to show you a way to use your stamps if you don't have an ink pad. Use your kids markers that we bought. Kind of use the edge of your marker to run across it. Do not use permanent marker because you would have to move super fast to even get it to stamp out the one time, and you know, there's really not a way to reconstitute it. There is rubbing alcohol, but I don't know how well that rubbing alcohol would act when it comes to getting on your fun foam. So use kids markers, use water markers, watercolor markers, washable markers. That's what I was trying to think of. So there we go. Now we've got it on here. Now if it took you a really long time to stamp that, you can breathe on it. And the dampness in your breath will make that ink just damp enough for you to stamp with. So here is our postage stamp. I'm going to do it again. And you can do it a few times. Just remembering you're massaging the back of your cardboard. You're not pressing super hard because you don't want to. Let me see if I press this through. I'm going to press real hard. And not as much, but see, you can see where the blue ink came through right here. And you don't really want that because you were trying to get something like this, you know. And now you've got this postage stamp, and we can just put like, oh, well, we can't do it with a marker that does, or a pen that doesn't work, but you put a little cent sign on there. You can put 10 cents or whatever. And obviously he's backwards. He's not facing the same way, because it's a stamp and they're always backwards. I don't know what happened to my thing. All right, so we're going to, so that's our little guy there. I'm going to show you the one that you can make into a square. So we're just going to, and remember, you're only putting your ink on the top of the fun foam, so don't try and get down into those, into all those little bits. Okay. I'm going to breathe on it a little bit. And then I'm just going to put it down here. There we go. So see, isn't that a cool corner? I should have put it in the corner. Let's see if I got a stamp off on it or not. Cool corners for journals, for cards, for anything that you're doing. Yeah, doesn't have much of a stamp off. But so you've got your corner. So now let's make it that corner into a square. And see, this has a handle on the back. So much easier to hold it to color it. I forgot that I had it the first time. All right, so now we're going to take this because it's even. And we're going to put it on here. Try and line it up on the edge and top and bottom. And see? Now it's a square. And there, you know, those parts matched up pretty well. Now this one, you can still do the same thing, but it won't be symmetrical maybe. It won't line up. Oh well, I'm just going to do it here. So there we go. Now, if we want to turn it around, line up the points and the inside edge. And there we go. We have a square, but it's not, but it actually looks kind of cool because this kind of looks like it goes whew, 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 just like that. So that's cool too. So you just never know. And, you know, what it's going to turn out like, whether you're going to like it or not until you get it done. But like I said, I don't really know that I've ever had one I hated. I've had some that weren't my favorites. I've had some that I fell in love with. I have a mask one that I made that I use all the time. Alrighty, so there we go. There's that one. All right, so let's do, what we did Hope. Let's do Hope. I have to hurry up here. I'm not going to be able to upload this video. Hopefully I haven't gone too far. Oh, I might have. We'll find out. Okay, so we're going to do our Hope. Oops. And so see, isn't that cool? They're just so, you know, they're just so cool. And, you know, something like this with just the little bits. Oh, I told you to keep all your cutoff parts, because what you can do is you can just cut your cutoff parts into any kind of a shape. Take a piece of your cardboard, just cut them all and just start sticking them all over on that piece of cardboard. And then it makes a great background stamp. So that is how you make your own homemade foam stamps. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I really enjoy making these so much. I was wondering what happened to the one that said love. I can't find it. And for next week we are going to need a bottle of white glue. This is just plain old kids white glue. A hole punch. And I told you we were going to need masking tape. So let's see here. Is that all I have here? Yes. So we have $3.75 because my Dollar Tree has gone up to $1.25 now. So $3.75. We'll put $3.25 in our bank. And so we will have $14 in the bank. So that's very cool. See how fast money can, you know, add up when you don't have to go out. When you go to the store, make a list. Buy what's on your list, especially if you're going to a craft store, because it's so easy to go, ooh, I want one of those, I want one of those, I want some of this, I want some of that. Just buy what you're going there for. Go in, kind of know where you're going, go right to it, get it, and get right out. Because if you walk around, you're going to come out with more stuff. And if you're going to the big craft stores, you know, try and go when they have their coupons too, if you have to go there to get something. So, but anyways, I hope that you enjoyed this video. We didn't do it with the paint. We'll have to maybe do that next week. But this is next week's items that we're going to need. All of them came from the Dollar Tree. Thank you very much for stopping by. I really do appreciate you. And if there's anything that you want, me to try or to do, just let me know. Put it in the comments below and I will put it on my list. So thanks again, and I hope that you all have an outstanding day. Bye-bye.